Hey everyone, several years ago I was an athletics coach, kind of part-time. It was during the time that I was an R&D scientist, and I just had a passion, a real interest in athletics. I was a long jumper myself, a competitive long jumper, but I ended up coaching long jump and triple jump with one of the UK's really big athletics club called Sale Harriers in Manchester. And I remember one weekend we were taking a squad of young athletes to an athletics meet. It was part of the national junior leagues that they were competing in, and I got chatting with this retired PE teacher, and we got onto the subject of the mind-body connection. I told her that although I was an R&D scientist, my real passion was understanding and harnessing the mind-body connection. I told her all about my research into how the placebo effect kind of worked. And she told me this fascinating story. She said a few years earlier, the great Ed Moses had come to her school, and he came to talk to the kids all about sports and the importance of health and fitness. Ed Moses, some of you may not remember him. Ed Moses was, he was a legend in athletics, in the 400 metres hurdles. In fact, he went unbeaten in 10 years. He won over 100 consecutive finals, multiple world records in the 400 metres hurdles, a couple of Olympic gold medals, world championship, you name it, Ed Moses had done it. Anyway, she said the next day, Moses had given her a pass to attend the athletics meet. It was an international meet that he was here to compete in the following day after he'd been to her school. And he said, so Ed Moses had given her a pass, so she'd come along to the meet. And it got to round about his event time, and she got a wee bit worried because all of his fellow athletes, were striding up and down the track, and they were doing their stretches and their leg bops and all that kind of stuff. And she couldn't see Ed Moses anywhere. And she thought, has something happened? Is he not turned up? And after walking around for a while, she found him. And he was lying, seemingly asleep, beside one of the hurdles. And she thought, wow, I hope he's okay. And she got a wee bit kind of worried. But then, all of a sudden, about 15 minutes before the actual race, he just got up, done a couple of stretches, jogged up and down the track a few times, then got onto the starting area. The starting pistol went off, and Ed Moses just left everyone in his wake, and he won by more than 10 metres. In fact, the wide angle camera only picked Ed Moses up going through the line. He was so far ahead. And she got chatting with him afterwards, and she said, look, were you just so confident that you didn't have to go through all the usual rigmarole of stretching and striding? You do all these kind of things called striding. You elongate your stride just to stretch your muscles. I used to get all the athletes doing it as well. I used to do it myself. It's called striding out. So you're just elongating your muscles, and then you do little drill things to speed up the muscle fibres. Anyway, and he said, no, I was visualising. And she went, what? She said, yeah, visualising. I close my eyes, and then I run the entire race in my mind. She said, and he explained that when I imagine the starting pistol goes off, and I imagine the feeling and sensation of driving out the blocks, running towards the first hurdle, and I feel the grip of my spikes on the track pushing, propelling me forward. And then as I approach the first hurdle, I imagine and I feel the sensation of my lead leg going over the hurdle, and my back leg, the trail leg, coming smoothly over. Then I feel the sensation of landing on the track, and then I drive forward, and I'm imagining it as clear as I can in every detail, taking exactly 13 strides as I reach the next hurdle, and the front leg goes over the back leg smoothly, and then runs the entire race, and I do the whole race in my mind. And he said, then I know I'm ready to run the race. And I thought, isn't that absolutely amazing? And then she was kind of blown away, and hadn't really thought about it until we were having this conversation. And it turns out that now we understand no one really did visualization in Ed Moses' day. We were talking, he was active really in the late 70s and the 80s and stuff like that, and it was something that hardly anyone did. But now we know. In fact, I remember talking to colleagues, senior R&D scientists, about the mind-body connection, because I was interested in the placebo effect, and nobody really believed that the mind could impact the body in any way whatsoever. I mean, most people just thought that the placebo effect, people just improved anyway. That was just what was going to happen. But now we know for absolute certainty that when you imagine something, in many ways your brain processes it as if it's really happening. I mean, for example, if I was to like do that repetitively with my hands, and you were to scan the brain, then what you would see is the region of the brain connected to my fingers would expand. So there'd be extra brain circuits growing in that area. But if I imagine doing it instead, the exact same thing would happen. And if you looked at both sets of brain scans, you probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the scans for whether I was doing that or whether I was imagining doing it. So in many ways, the brain processes real as imaginary. You know, one of my really favourite studies actually was done by a researcher called Kerry Morewedge. And he invited a group of volunteers to either eat cubes of cheese or to imagine eating cubes of cheese, but to imagine eating them in every detail as if you really were eating them. So if you would normally pick it up and chew 10 times and then swallow, then you were to imagine picking it up, chewing 10 times and swallowing. So exactly the same. Anyway, afterwards, he gave them a short test to test their appetite. And what usually happens if you, after you eat something for a while, you know, your appetite begins to wane. Obviously, or we would never stop eating, unless you're a Labrador dog. I used to have a Labrador called Oscar who would literally eat himself into oblivion if he was allowed to. He would never stop. He would literally not stop. I don't think they have that switch in the brain. But for most of us, we have that little switch, a little mechanism in the brain that says, you know, I've eaten a certain amount, so let's suppress my appetite. But what was amazing is the appetite suppression was exactly the same for those who ate the cubes of cheese, really, and those who imagined eating the cubes of cheese. And Morewedge's team actually reported that the line between real and imaginary, as far as the brain is concerned, is becoming increasingly blurred. You know, there's some fantastic clinical applications as well. But one study, several studies have used this type of repetitive visualization for people who've had a stroke. You know, and what happens is everyone in the study who's had a stroke, and it doesn't have to be a recent stroke. For one study, some of the patients were 14 years ago. So, but everyone gets the same physiotherapy. But half of them, after the physiotherapy, they do a relaxation session. But the other half do visualization. And they repetitively visualize movement of the impaired side. So if, for example, they have impairment on that side, then they would repetitively visualize, you know, say reaching for a bottle of water, taking a drink, putting it back down, reaching, drink, put it back down, reach, drink, put it back down, etc., etc. But the repetition of the movement. And amazingly, what these studies show is those who do the visualization as well as physiotherapy recover much faster than those who are just doing physiotherapy alone. And it's now widely known in sports. In fact, most elite athletes do some sort of mental practice because it's widely known now that this is how good you'll normally get with physical practice alone, but add some mental practice and it enhances it. And it's the same again with the clinical applications as well. Not visualizing instead of the exercise, of course. Put the exercise or the physical practice and add your mind to it, and you increase the effectiveness of the overall thing. Anyway, just thought I'd share that story. I was just, you know, I was doing a wee bit of writing this morning and my mind just drifted onto you know, sometimes you recall little things. My mind drifted onto the time when I was an athletics coach and stuff, and I just thought, oh, I just remembered that story about Ed Mosey. I also wrote about it actually in my new book, Why Woo It Works, when I was explaining how visualization actually works. So anyway, wherever you are, enjoy your day and be kind. It's always the right thing to do.